Erick Godsey, welcome back to the KKP. I guess you can't call it that. Welcome back to the Kyle Kingsbury podcast.
Well, why can't you call it the KKP?
Because it would be the KK podcast. You can't call it the KKP podcast.
True.
That's double podcasting. You know,
thank
I
you for
caught
having
myself
me.
there. Brother, it's always a pleasure. We never get to
Likewise.
see each other. I know every time I have you on now, I talk about this. But from a life trajectory standpoint, the amount of growth that happened when I was sitting near you at On It and then in Fit for Service was, and I know we covered the fuck out of this last time we talked, but it was truly something special. The bubble that we had, you know,
sure.
just being around each other was fucking rad. And I miss that more than anything. You know, the events were dope. The people were awesome. Getting to go to some of the coolest places, you know, on earth with your Ohana was fucking rad. And most importantly was just the fucking daily of being around each other. And so I missed that. And I got to see you here at the farm. Tell us about the DAC event, and then we're going to get into a bunch of weird shit, because that's what this is all about today. Weird
Well, we actually might do that in reverse order because I feel like I owe you a huge apology. So, like, as you're speaking to, one of the things that I really enjoyed was when we would do these events and you and me would have like 3 or 4 hours where we didn't have to do anything. And it's just like, all right, Kyle, tell me the most wild shit you've gotten into and let me ask you questions. And you were super gracious with me, and like we got into all sorts of shit. And specifically things that most people would classically interpret as conspiracy theories. And one of the things I knew about you is that out of everyone I've ever met, you're one of the only people I know who reads as much as me and has a comparable recall, you know, because it's kind of autistic how well you and I remember what we read. And so I trusted your capacity to regurgitate the facts as you read them in books, because like one of the things I have a very low patience for is talking to someone who's into conspiracies, but I know that they've never read a book about it. It's all TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and that's not saying that that's not credible, but there's a different bar that one has to cross, especially pre-AI bullshit, to publish a book. And so we would talk. And it was like it was my spiritual duty to be the Socratic gadfly. And now in the last like 4 weeks, man, it's been I'm surprised at how non-disorienting the change in my ontology, and it's not so much that anything that I've heard I'm like that's 100% true. It's that I think something happened with the Epstein file drops and me being able to like, I spent a decent amount of time like reading a lot of these emails and just feeling like it wounded my worldview in a way that allowed it to like open up, and a bunch of shit came in to the vacuum of the rupture. And I have like a massively more sophisticated and nuanced appreciation for the UFO/UAP phenomenon, remote viewing, the depth and width of MK Ultra, and recently I forget the name of the dude I sent you. I think it's like Giorgiani or something.
Giorgiani, yeah.
And again, we're moving super slow here, but I was in the car with my friend the other day, and we were coming back from having seen Project Hail Mary. Incredible.
Oh, you like it?
Fucking.
I wasn't going to see it, and I saw the trailer yesterday when I took the kids to a movie, and I was like, that actually was fucking good. And I like Gosling.
It's incredible. It's gorgeous. It is surprisingly funny without taking away from the drama. But I think the thing that movie does that is a Herculean project on behalf of the writer, because it's based off of a book by Andrew Weir, is...
Wait, the doctor, Andrew Weir? Is that his name?
I think the author is like ANDY space Y or space WEIR, Andy Weir.
Maybe I'm confusing him with someone else. I don't know. Keep going. I don't want to derail you. Go ahead.
But like one of my big things to people since I was a kid about the UFO stuff is like, dog, the statistical chance that a species that evolved on a different planet would look anything remotely like what we are used to when interacting with another human is essentially zero. And most people's response to that is like, well, what if this human form is like the most like effective, like, and with love, that's someone who is saying that they don't understand the evolutionary process as it's observed, and
Yeah, and I might poke the Czech said to me the universe. God, how did you word this? The universe isn't wasteful, meaning if something is good in it, you'll see it repeated. And if we were potentially, this is just getting right into some other shit, but could very well be part of the conversation today since we're talking aliens and fun stuff. If you get into the idea of the Anunnaki or us having been seeded, and Greg Braden and many others talking about this chain, the break in our genetic chain, and how there's a double telomere back to back that doesn't happen anywhere else in our genetic code. Again, I'm not a fucking geneticist or anything. I can't verify or poke holes in that, but that is verification of a tinkering that happened to us back in the time, a certain amount of timeline. Sure. Which also would be the result in our brains and all the other shit that we can't figure out why, and that we are some amalgamation of primate and this other alien race.
For sure. So it was never a compelling response because like the real problem that I'm offering when I'm talking to someone who's talking about this type of stuff is, one, I 100% believe that there is intelligent life outside of us. And two, it's an invitation to the person in front of me to open your mind to that it's more weird than we can imagine when we're going to make contact with a truly intelligent species that evolved on a different planet with a different set of mutations and evolutionary fitness advantages for their local environment. So anyways,
we'd love just to give people a picture of that. We loved Arrival.
Yes.
The movie Arrival. Yes. Loved it. Talked about that for years. I've seen it. We've both seen it multiple times.
That's a good
example. And the cephalopod, like you wouldn't expect that from your classic ET phenomenon and what we
truly unique.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Project Hail Mary, I think, does an incredible job at, how would we try to communicate with some other conscious intelligence that we meet? And I think that's where the movie really fucking shines, is the relationship between the main character and the UAP that he encounters. And I'll just leave it there.
Hell yeah. I like that. That's a good primer. I didn't even realize there was that in that movie until, that there was other consciousness until seeing that trailer in fullness in the theaters. And I was like, oh shit, they got that as a little twist. All right. I thought it was just, this guy's got to save the earth, your typical Armageddon bullshit. He wakes up and he's got the Jesus beard and can't remember. I don't know. Anyways, the trailer looked fucking cool. So I'm definitely intrigued to see it now. And I like Gosling. Let's talk about, where things have kind of shifted for you, because, and I want to frame this for people like, why are you talking about this? Or this podcast has fallen far from the days of total human optimization, but not through a certain lens, right? And so, if I was to say, like, if I have a sex expert on or something like that, sex is a part of human optimization. Relationship is part of human optimization. Our relationship to nature, right? Fucking Daniel Fritz Griffith, that's a part of human optimization because it's optimizing the totality. When we talk about things like this, to me, it's not just do aliens exist or not? It's what does the picture of our reality actually look like? And how do we interface with it?
100%.
And it's a deeper conversation of consciousness. It's a deeper conversation around what's possible. And so I love shit like this. I geek out on it.
I have a few points that I'd love to just offer to the people who might be listening who are thinking like, well, why the fuck are they talking about this? So a few things, why it's interesting to me. First and foremost, there is an appreciation that like the wound of the Epstein files has created in me that there is so much more going on than I have ever been exposed to, because I wasn't willing to look at the corroborative evidence that exists. Two, I am a child of the public education system, and therefore I am historically retarded. Like, just straight up, if you're listening to this and you also grew up in the public education system and you didn't grow up in some like Waldorf or like having like a super special set of parents and aunties and uncles, our historical literacy is it is a fucking embarrassment. Like, for example, almost no one I know knows the amendments that make up the Bill of Rights. You know, and like, I don't know them off the top of my head. We're dumb. And so, one of the things that I have been appreciating, I've been specifically getting into this rabbit hole through Jesse Michaels' podcast, American Alchemy. And the thing that stands out to me is his capacity to function as an investigative journalist who is interested on collecting the facts and then finding how to corroborate the facts. And his podcast, whenever like a interview is mentioned, they'll show a clip of the actual interview where you get to see the person they're referencing talking. If they reference some type of government operation, they will show a screenshot of the actual unclassified government document. And they really go out of their way to approach it like an investigative journalist. And so a part of human optimization, especially in 2026, especially as the rise of, slop starts to invade the internet, is what is your capacity to maneuver unknown cognitive territory in a way where you don't succumb to bad information, and two, you actually have the flexibility to update your worldview. And so from a pure like worldview building animal, because for everyone here, in order for us to maintain our sanity, is we have to be, we are such competent magicians that we don't know we're magicians, and kind of like the default magician task we're all doing is holding together a worldview that keeps us from killing ourselves and from continuing to do hard things each day that matter to us. A lot of the muggles are fucked because they've never, and I mean that as a joke, and if that triggers you, you're a muggle. No, but for
it
real,
shouldn't trigger these listeners, but yes,
yeah,
I'll use muggle a lot. I love that word.
Is that we are going to be tasked to navigate an information landscape that is the most toxic it's ever been, and I find, for me personally, going down this rabbit hole now at this point in my life, where it's not like an addiction to keep me from giving my dharma to the world. Like I'm having success, I'm leading a community, I'm showing up to my partner. This is now something that I can contend with in an interesting way, where it's incredibly cognitively demanding to like just sift through like, okay, what are the facts? Why do I think these are facts? And then instead of jumping to all these interesting conclusions, I'm just like immersing myself in this fact field. The third thing that's interesting is, if I'm being honest with myself, I am interested in trying to figure out how to grow my competence to the place where one day I could contend with the people that press buttons that kill children. And because that's actually the desire, the first thing to recognize is, like I said earlier, like from a technical chemistry standpoint, like I'm retarded. Like from like a, not from a derogatory, like look at that kid. No, like in chemistry, the word retardant is a chemical that keeps something else from completing its chemical process. So like there's a fire, then you have a flame retardant, it keeps the flame down. I am so far away from having any competence to be able to contend with the true boogeymen on this planet who are not metaphysical, who press the buttons, who make the commands because it fits into their worldview that fucking kill children. That exposing myself to the type of investigative journalism aspect of the UAP and of like the main, it exposes me to the intelligence community. It exposes me to some of the players that have like slipped out of the intelligence community. It exposes me to the type of strategies that they play. And so like one of the ways that I think about it is exposing myself to this information. It's like I'm starting to get my first whiff of dementors. You know, like I don't get to go to Azkaban, but I know it exists. And every once in a while, there's a fucking dementor that gets caught in a London tunnel with Harry Potter. You know, and it's like I'm personally curious to, because I guess the fourth thing is for most people, and this was me, you know, because I hadn't looked into it, because it is a huge cognitive task to open yourself up to a conspiracy theory, quote unquote, because it's a invitation to an ontological reconfiguration, which is like, most people don't have the privilege of the extra emotional and cognitive bandwidth to be like, it's Friday. I'll go ahead and fuck up my entire ontological worldview of how everything is structured, you know? But I have been humbled by the mountain of well-researched and sincere people who have collected just on the UAP phenomenon. Like, so this is unidentified aerial phenomenon. A thing almost no one knows. So, like, this is one of the jokes that popped into my head. Is like, I owe an apology to all of my friends who are conspiracy theorists, but in my defense, most of you guys are bad journalists. And, like, what I mean by that is the majority of the conversations I've had throughout my life, if I ask, how do you know this? Or like, what is the fact like thread? Either they can't recall anything, and you know, it's like, or the recall is just so scattered that it's not telling a story, and it's kind of hard for me to follow. And like, just one thing that I have found is kind of like a cognitive cookie bomb that the people around me who aren't into this will like be like, oh, what, really? Is that there is a specific type of person in the military who is called a missileer, who are the people who are the like active duty intelligence officers who aren't like high up, who are the ones who are responsible for watching the button or the flip that you would have to press or flip for a atomic warhead to be activated. Like, that's like a job that you have. It's called being a missileer. These people have very stringent psych evaluations that they have to pass in order to do this job, and they can't be taking anything, and they take drug tests each week. They have to report if they get sick. They have to report if they're taking Tylenol, because the government wants their consciousness clean and sober, because they're the ones that if they press this button and the atomic warhead is going on. There's a book called Atom Bombs and UFOs. I think that's what it's called. Great, that's a unique title. And there are over 140 documented whistleblowers that eventually come forward over the last, I think, 60 plus years, who were missileers, who reported seeing some type of UAP interacting with the warhead that they were watching over. These are people who have no incentive to make this up. In fact, they're incentivized to cover it up because they will lose their motherfucking job. You know, like if they talk
more
about
slander, like fucking death threats.
140 documented whistleblower casing reporting has come forward. And so, like, just that fact alone is like, there is something happening on the planet that our government appears to not be able to stop, that is almost attracted to our nuclear weapons. And there are reports of, the majority of the reports are they, like, deactivate something that's being activated. And I don't know the details, but there's some stories where they activate ones that were deactive. but they definitely seem to be interacting with it. And so that's just an example of that is incredibly good evidence. Like it's not proof, but it's really good evidence that the average person who dismisses these things, like if you ask them if there's any evidence that they know about the thing, the answer is no. And so there's just been a really like deep humbling for me where it's like our world is so much more interesting and magical and like just fucking out there than I had thought. And then at the very least, it feels like I'm coming into intimate contact with the quote unquote modern mythology. Like this is our culture's modern folklore. Like however you want to judge it from an empirical historical analysis, from a mythological standpoint, I think the thing I've really just started to understand in like the last like month is just like, yo, this is my country's myth. Like this is our folklore. This is our mythic, like the Greys, the reptilians, the moon is hollow and there's a soul catcher inside of it. Like these are a part of our modern pantheon. And if you go on YouTube, man, and you like, these videos are very popular is what I'm basically trying to say. Like I had a friend who had just started on YouTube as a podcaster who was getting like 2,000 to 10,000 views a week. He started to get into the UAP phenomenon. He started to get into remote viewing. He's at 200,000 subscribers now over the last 2 years. It's been, I think, 2.5 years or 3 years. He went from, 8,000 subscribers to over 200,000. There's a deep, like, you can measure the potency of a myth by how many people give their attention to it. And like, I don't know if you know, but the most viewed Joe Rogan podcast of all time on YouTube is the first interview with Bob Lazar.
Gangster.
It's more than Trump.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's kind of a plethora for people who might be thinking like, why are they talking about this? Number one, if you're ill, or if you're just trying to make enough money to get to the next check, don't worry about this shit. And just enjoy this shit if it's fun.
Those might be the people that are fucking most into it too, though.
Yeah, I do think there is a bell curve of interest in conspiracies where like the lower end of it is I unconsciously pursue this interesting shit because it allows me the entertainment and the justification of attending to the things in my life that I could attend to actually live the type of life I'd be happy to live. Like that's one end of this bell curve. And then I think in the middle of this bell curve is, at least here's what it was like for me. What's the right way to word this? Where the top of the bell curve is, this now becomes your full preoccupation. You think you're actually doing something, but if you're not like if you don't have a good epistemological humility and rigor, it's like, as soon as this becomes your full-time thing and you actually think that you're getting somewhere with it, it's like you're on the path to very likely a psychosis. Like, if you don't have like a honed epistemological structure where you can hold new ideas and then question yourself and not go down rabbit holes and not have stuff from your unconscious like breakthrough, like it seems to be if you interact with the type of magical material, and when I say magical, I mean language. Like, if you deal with this type of like radioactive mythic material, and you don't have a good hazmat suit, you'll get radiation poisoning. And the way that looks in the modern, especially like young men, because through the work we've done, we've met a lot of these motherfuckers. And it's what is often the case is some fulfilled attachment wound in childhood gets to start to be played out through their mind just being absolutely ruptured by like a combination of psychedelics and the most
frequent cannabis use,
right,
all the things.
It's like a group of people we've been coaching for a year without us knowing it. They come up to us as a group of 6 and they whisper to us that they are literally aliens from some other star system, and that Arcturus, and that they are coming to you because they need to like turn you on.
You got to reactivate your starseed juice.
Right. And so that's halfway. So, if we look at this like pre-tragic, tragic, post-tragic relationship with this type of like what people would call conspiratorial material, I think where I'm currently trying to flirt at, because I never got sucked into stage 2, because I never got sucked in.
You know yourself.
Right.
That's really what it boils down to. You know yourself. You're not looking to attach yourself to something else or find yourself in a new identity.
Right. The thing that I'm finding that is so interesting is like, I think there is a meta appeal. There is a meta lesson that these people who have come before me, who have really tried to do their best to make sense of a scattering of facts that don't fit our current worldview, that they've taken the time to try to collect the facts and then weave a potential speculation of like, what's the gestalt here? Is these people are having to hone their capacity to make sense of the categorically unknown in a way that strikes me artistically as, this is what I need to be studying so that I can reverse engineer it, so that I can create games, so that I can teach the people who are paying attention to what I'm doing, because this is the skill that will be the most effective for us as we move through what's happening. What I mean by what's happening is anyone who has the capacity to attempt to pay attention to what's happening to the world, we are in the singularity that Ray Kurzweil talked about when I was in high school and college. We have passed the event horizon. I don't want to bum people out, but it's just like, insert AI, insert war, insert disclosure, insert if you actually track like inflation and things like that. Things are just they're going to get so weird. And I guess the takeaway is we're going to have to become black belts at dealing with unknown things that we are going to experience in our lifetime soon, and that we already have.
That's bang on. Yeah, I love it. I love the framework from the psychological perspective. Break down like what you talked about. You gave Jesse Michaels a shout out and George Giorgiani. I'm 30 minutes through that 3-hour podcast and it's fire. I just love the breakdown there. I think he does, at least from, I haven't seen the whole thing yet, but from the standpoint of how he gives an outline, an arc to the story of what they're going to cover. It's a nice way of packaging the deal, right? Where you get to learn about MK Ultra, you get to learn about our government's involvement in things like this. You get to learn about a lot of things. I get clips all the time. I mean, my feed on Instagram knows exactly what the fuck I'm looking for, so and Chuck sending me stuff. A bunch of people send me stuff. There was a thing from Dwight Eisenhower, I guess, had met with a group of highly evolved beings. We call them HEBs. I like that because there's an HEB grocery store here and with highly evolved beings at the HEB. And anyways, he said that they had given him the understanding of how to heal all disease, how to create free energy, like all these things. And he went back to him and regretfully said that would destabilize our economy. We're not going to use it. And so it's just like, I don't know if that's true or not, but boy, does
Why did he get to make that choice on our behalf?
Does that paint a picture of, I don't think it was just him making that choice. I think fucking everybody else there that's got their hand in the cookie jar knew that choice. But whether that's true or not, it does point to, one of the other things that I've heard frequently when it comes to like the alien communication is that our technology has exceeded our heart. Right, our technological advancements have exceeded our capacity to love and have compassion.
Yeah.
And to me, that is hugely evident. And that is also, I think, the main conundrum as we enter the singularity is that fact of that skew, right? And now, because we're going to see that widen at a fucking dramatic pace with quantum computing and AI and all the other stuff, with all of the changes that are about to happen pretty much overnight, right? In this 20-year crisis period, if you follow the fourth turning, since 2008 housing, obviously we had 9/11 and other things. It's not like every one of these seasons doesn't experience something traumatic. They do, but this 20-year cycle seems to be the most grave. And then we pop out of that and we're in a new high. I'm very curious to see what amalgamation of understanding society takes that they agree on to enter the new high. And this should end like 2030, 2031, 2032. A lot of people speculate this is the reason there's a UN 2030 agenda. There's a Paris Climate Accord for 2030. There's a whole bunch of shit that all depends on 2030. And there's a 2051 and a bunch of others. But I'm always curious about that through cycles of time. Like, where have we been before? There's a funny meme going around. I'm sure you've seen, a lot of people have seen, where it's like, man reaches a certain point, they're technological beings, they create hyper-intelligence AI because they want to create God. Super AI comes along, enslaves humanity, and then the sun sends a plasma blast that fucking destroys all electronics on Earth. Humanity comes back from underground and worships the sun god, and then after so many thousands of years, the cycle goes back to it. And I was like, I don't want that to be true, dude. That'd be a hell of a loop to be stuck in.
Yeah.
But there, the rabbit hole of this stuff, I think, it is entertaining sometimes, but it also goes beyond that, especially as it pertains to our history, where we come from. And then, where I like how, the Epstein drop was kind of your entry point because it was a break in your view of reality. I think sometimes it takes that, right? Like Chuck says, crisis is necessary for some people to change. Most people won't change until there's a holy shit hits the fan, right? And so, we can each have those at different points in our lives that crack the doorway open to let something new in. But what was hardest for you in terms of coming to terms with this, and what was really the thing where you were just like, oh, wow, all right. And maybe it's not any one thing. It's probably a sandwich, where you've got the layer of the MK Ultra, and then you've got a layer of this and a layer of that. Talk a bit about those layers here.
Yeah. So there's a quote in Dune when Lady Jessica meets her Fremen housekeeper, and they have that weird scene where with the Chris knife and the housekeeper screams and shrieks. The quote in both the movie and the book is something along the lines of, when you've lived so long with prophecy, the act of revelation is a shock. Like, the people in the spiritual space who virtue signal towards the people who were disrupted by the Epstein files being like, well, we knew this for years. It's like, fuck off. Like, yeah, I also know that kids die. But if I see evidence of a kid just having died and I grieve, and you walk past and you're like, well, I knew kids died for 5 years. It's like, you're doing that for someone, go do it away from me. And if I'm online, then I just scroll past it. But I had spent a lot of time researching what I was able to find about the Epstein conspiracy. It was one of the most harrowing and sickening research. This was probably about 9 months ago, and I looked into it previously a couple of times the years before, but it was about 9 months ago that I really went in, and I learned basically that within the last 100 years in the Western world, there are examples of other nations and countries having an intelligence apparatus, like, their version of the CIA or something, know about or create. But I think the majority of these are they find it, which they basically find someone who is a serial pedophile who has some type of ring in some type of community where they have a lot of blackmail on people, and it kind of is an organic thing because the person who's willing to go get the children is the one that kind of has this power. And there was a famous orphanage in Ireland called the Kincord Boys Orphanage, and then there was a famous legal case that exposed a pedophile ring, I believe in Hungary, where both of these rings were known of by the intelligence agency of that country and allowed to continue because it was an asset to the intelligence apparatus. And so once I looked into that, I was like, that looks like what the Epstein thing is. And, there were like witness testimonies and stuff, but there was something about reading dozens and dozens of emails that the URL was fucking .gov, and that these had file numbers attached to it, and that the people responsible in the DOJ for releasing it, if they had done something to tamper with that, like if they had changed or if it was fake, they would be legally prosecutable by powers beyond what Trump could just be. I mean, I guess Trump could give them a pardon, but like, it was good evidence. And it was through, like, it was like a slow cook. Because one of the things that I promised myself is whenever I saw something wild on Reddit or Instagram that referenced the Epstein files, I would actually go try to corroborate it by going to the actual database, typing in the number of the file, and then finding it. And like at least 10 times, I was like, this for sure is fake. Like, this is someone making something fake online. I type in the motherfucking name, or I type in the file number, and it would pop up, and I would look at it, and it was just doing something to me. And the one that really cracked me open was, I actually have it saved on my phone, because it was an email from a woman to Epstein where she was like, can I come over or something? And then he said, yes, we're going to eat raw shrimp. And her response to raw shrimp was like, no, that's disgusting. I can't do that. You try to get me to do it last time. I can't even be in the room when you guys do that. And then he sends a long email that totally reconfigured my skepticism of the Pizzagate thing, or the specific aspect of the Pizzagate thing where there is a clear coded language in food. Mm-hmm. But it was also the structure of the email also fit. I've extensively studied cults and like cult dynamics and how the leaders fuck up because it's really interesting to me. And there's a specific technique that a man in power will do to a woman to like get her addicted to him in a way where then he can have like a harem of basically like women who will etch it, like the Exium cult. He had all of the women that he had in his most inner cloister, he had them brand his initials right above their reproductive organs.
Damn.
Yeah. And there's a process of indoctrination that some cult leaders will do where it's like you make them do things that they don't want to do as like a slow initiation, and then you oversee what they eat, you oversee how much they work out, and it's a trope in these things. And in this response, Epstein was like, not only are you going to eat the shrimp, but you're going to work with, and then he named someone else, and you're not leaving until you show me that you can prepare. And then he listed like 6 type of food dishes, but they were weird. You know, like it wasn't like
It wouldn't go together.
Right.
Like hot dogs and shrimp, pizza
Right.
and shrimp.
right. And you're going to work out this much, and you're going to send me proof, and blah blah blah. And it was that email in conjunction with the like probably 80 or 90 emails that I had looked at over the course of like probably about 2 weeks that was the thing that was just like. And then by accident or synchronicity, like a week later, I saw a podcast episode with Erick Weinstein, and I really like watching interviews with Weinstein, especially when he talks to people who are out there, because he's just so fucking smart that like even when he's trying to be kind, he comes off as like a huge douchebag. But then when he talks about what he knows, he's really good. And it was a 4-hour podcast on the Jesse Michaels podcast. It was the first time I'd ever seen Jesse Michaels podcast, and it was a 4-hour debate with the leading physicists of a lot of the intelligence communities, organizations around the UAP thing. And I watched it because I thought like Weinstein is going to fucking tear into this. And I didn't even know who the other guy was, but I was just like, I'm going to watch the skeptic win. And he did kind of quote unquote win, but the content of the 4 hours and the mutual facts that they just all took for granted as being facts just exposed me to a motherfucking like a bachelor's degree of information. And by the time I was done with that podcast, I was like, there's a here. And so then the next day I listened to Jesse Michaels' most popular podcast, or his most watched episode, which is the one that he recently did with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan came on his podcast, and Joe barely ever goes on anyone's podcast. So I was like, interesting.
Never.
I'll check that out.
That's wild.
It was like a 2.5-hour podcast. And they, talked about like Joe had a really weird dream, at the beginning of the podcast, and they talked about that for a while. But then about halfway through, they get into the Apollo 11 moon launch. And we may have talked about this, but one of the things we did, but I think it was off air, that I really appreciate about the American Alchemy podcast is whoever the video editors are, they are changing the game of how to show clips within a podcast. Like, I, within an hour, was exposed to more like objective facts, like weird facts around the Apollo 11 mission, with screenshots of documents, with pictures of people. And the thing that really fucked me up was clips of different interviews. And there's lots of weird facts around the Apollo 11 moon launch and, everything that came out of that. And 100%, we produced propaganda around that time, around that launch, because, it was like we were competing with the consciousness of the world about like, is it capitalism or is it communism? And I totally get that. The thing that really did something to my gut was watching the interview of the 4 astronauts the day after they come back. And anyone can go find this interview online. If you watch it without sound, like, I want to know what you think is happening. Like, if you just mute it and you just look at their body language and you feel your gut, these, like, it rocked me. Because they looked terrified and stressed out. Like they were trying to avoid, like this was the most high stakes thing they had ever done, is being in this press conference room the day after achieving the most monumental, it should be like, yay. And all 4 of them look fucking stressed and scared.
They look like they just had the men in black sit in front of them and say, if you guys don't sell this, you're dead, your family's fucking dead, and just went down the list of little Johnny and Timmy and Christina and everybody else that's a part of their family.
That's what it looked like to my gut.
They are borderline panic, and they have like almost like they're shut down.
Yeah.
That's how fucking nervous they are. And it's the complete opposite of we've done nothing, by the way, that ever compares to the fucking 7 wonders of the world. Nothing compares to the fucking pyramids. Nothing compares to a lot of things that's been built before us in recent times. This would have been that moment, right? Especially for young America. This was the motherfucking moment. And you think of American swag.
Right.
You think of fucking like McGuire getting the home run record and then Bonds beating that home run record. You think about like the things that fucking Lance Armstrong winning the Tour de France all those times. Fucking Michael Phelps in the Olympics with 8 golds. Think of that level of swag. And there's not an ounce of it. Not an ounce of joy. Not even relief. Like,
right.
I remember somebody did a thing on Chuck Liddell, and I got to train and live with Chuck for 2 of his last fights before the UFC. He's a good buddy. And they talked about his face at the end of a fight when he goes to go rah, and open up his arms and do his big thing. It said it looked like relief was an emotion he was experiencing in conjunction with the fucking unbelievable orgasmic experience of having decapitated somebody, right? Like,
Yeah.
there is, if people understand how you hit a home run, you're like, oh, I fucking hit a home run, and there's a yes, that goes along with that. Knocking someone out is in a league of its own. It's just exponentially more. Landing on the fucking moon would make knocking someone out look like a fucking joke, like a comical joke by comparison. And the fact that there's not even camaraderie.
Yeah.
These guys are like nervous for themselves. You'd think like if we fucking did that, dude, we'd be hanging on each other, high-fiving, slapping ass, like holding each other's hands. We're fucking back on Earth, baby.
I think that's a really good point that I didn't pick up, is that they all look like islands unto themselves when they're at that press conference. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And so I remember where I was. Like, I was listening to that podcast on the way to a friend's child's birthday, and I remember stepping out of the car and just being like, damn, I don't think I believe in the Apollo 11 moon mission. And so then that just opened the floodgates of, like, kind of in like a playful way, because I really trust and appreciate the journalistic integrity of Jesse Michaels as a host. Like, it is such a highly condensed, like, the amount of facts like that I didn't know existed, that I'm being exposed to through listening to these people, has just been like a really fun way to spend my free time instead of watching a show. Like, it was a joke during the Dharma Artist Collective, but that's when I found the first interview with Giorgiani. Because the one I sent you is the first one that him and Michael did. They had a recent one that was like super popular that then referenced that they had done a first one. So I went back and I watched the first one.
Well, that gives me extra juice then to dive into after.
Yeah, and that this one is all about like the circumstantial evidence that the Nazis had hydrogen bomb technology that they used as a bargaining tactic with the U.S. when they surrendered, so that the SS could get, and I always thought this was made up, but apparently there is a fact trail that our government, as a part of the treaty with the Germans, gave them a huge amount of money with the explicit, like, a part of the negotiations is that there would be asylum in Argentina for a fat swath of the SS and some of the other people in the higher-ups. And the ones who weren't getting asylum in Argentina were being brought in, through Operation Paperclip to become the forefathers of a lot of the intelligence agencies.
And NASA, Werner von Braun.
And NASA, 100%. And that there is also interesting, circumstantial, weird facts around the Nazis exploring Antarctica, and that Antarctica is very likely the true location of Atlantis. This is one of the things he was going on, and I'm like, I don't. But
Ooh, that's gangster if that's the case.
But this is what I now listen to in the evening instead of Brandon Sanderson. Is that listening to this?
You got to
stuff?
oscillate between
sure.
between the fiction and then the potential truth, like calling it the potential truth.
Yeah, and it's like, in a really weird way, I find that it's improving my writing, because like my core craft is writing and I do it all the time. And I've noticed since I've been exposing myself to this, I find that the quality of my writing has improved. And I think it's because I'm genuinely contending with new information that, like, is, like I was saying earlier, it just feels like it's helping me attune to a lot of the mythic content in our culture that I had looked away from because I had some part of my identity as like, I'm the gadfly to the conspiracy, And now what I'm more interested in is like doing my best to collect facts and not make conclusions, but just like I've oriented from gadfly to genuine investigative journalist. And to a lot of people who talk about conspiracies, an investigative journalist disposition feels just like a gadfly, because most people just are not prepared to like share their list of facts that help them come. Like, just a lot of people are sloppy thinkers, and a lot of people are not interested in trying to there's a certain type of discipline you have to have if you're going to be a career mountaineer, like where you try to climb to heights where you could die. And I think epistemologically, there's a lot of people who are trying to walk Mount Everest without any gear and are doing it because they're actually afraid to start to sing. There's like, I'm just going to try to walk up this mountain, and then they have like psychotic breaks and psychosis and stuff like that. And I feel like I'm starting to find my way in this space where I'm finding who the experienced mountaineers are, and starting to deconstruct like, how do they create their base camp? What type of materials do they bring with them? What traps do they look out for? And it just feels like it's genuinely improving my epistemological resilience. And so it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, you're rewiring the brain in a way. So that makes sense that something that you already have a talent in would expand.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, but obviously there's, the internet's littered with all kinds of stuff, and conspiracies are they're always going to be a part of it, as long as we have a free internet. I think that there are some really good books, that have helped me along the way. One is one of my favorite authors, Mark Gober. And, he did so many great books. He has like 7 or 8. He writes them very quickly. Graduated Ivy League school, top of his class, brilliant guy. Got into the tech sector, left that, hooked up with Adyashanti, who also is a fantastic fucking human being and author. He wrote The End of Your World is one of the best books from Adyashanti. But Gober got to meditate with him and understood a non-dual understanding of consciousness and a lot of, what we might experience in a peak psychedelic state or altered state. And he has several books I love. First, I'll just say I started with The End of Upside Down Liberty, which came right before COVID or right around it. And that was the first time where I had anybody break down politics and spirit in the same book and show where the rubber hits the road. Like, where can these actually live together, and what happens if we are devoid of both, and what happens if we have one and not the other. And it's beautiful. It's a fucking great book. It's easy to read. All of his stuff's on Audible. Then one later than that was An End to Upside Down Contact. And my first impression of that was like, I don't need to read this. I already fucking, I've interacted with other intelligences, and I've seen, at least once, I've seen a UAP move with 13 other guys. When I've told you that story a long time ago, but we were at the Native American reservation with my old boxing coach, Weetsy. There was 3 of us doing psilocybin, and like a grip of dudes from Eastside San Jose who were dead sober that had just come in that he was showing like a different way of life. Like, here, let's do the sweat. Don't worry about the medicine. And all of us went on this little walk right after coming out of the sweat. And obviously I've already ingested psilocybin with the 2 other fighters, but like we just stop in place, not a single sound, and look to the sky. It's a canyon with no running water and no lights, no electricity. So you can see, I mean, you're blocked from like San Jose's light disruption and all the other things. There's no light pollution there. And we looked up and we saw what looked like a white light, spherical, move in directions at speeds that weren't possible to change it, move at. Right. And then it got bigger when we were all holding each other like, holy shit, do you see that? And it got a little bit bigger and then just went like it had expanded and then gone. And that was crazy to me. I was like, it was a fucking UFO. And Weetzy goes, that was the spirit. And I was like, maybe, but I was like, I can't actually argue that, that could have been a spirit. Sure. We don't know what the fuck it is, right? But End Upside Down Contact, I ended up circling back to, because I love all of his books. And I was like, I should read this. And one of the things I loved in that is that as he talks about the potential of other consciousness and the evidence for it, he must bring up the conversation that there are good, and there are nefarious. For sure. Right. And that is present. And whether that's who's controlling the powers that be and reptilians and all this, he leaves that off, but he brings in, the fact that there are demonic rituals that have happened for probably since as long as humans have fucking been here, right? Sacrifices, child sacrifices, and that there's 2 states in the United States that have explicitly written what would determine like a demonic ritual.
Wow.
And it is fucking brutal to read it, because it's like that's the shit when you rabbit hole far enough that you come to. Right, we're talking about shrimp and stuff like that. Like that's the end game where you're like, all right, South Park showed Hillary Clinton eat a fetus, and it was fucking nasty, and people laugh, and it's wild. It's wild. That's all I got to say. And so I really loved how Mark took it there, because whether you're in a DMT realm you're not supposed to be in, or have something going on here on Earth, or you see like somebody working through an exorcism in ayahuasca, it's just like that. Yeah, that's a part of the parcel. It's a part of the game we're in. Yeah. Whether we understand it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not, it's a part of the game. And so I think he did a fantastic job there. That also can be the point that breaks you open when you find out about the kids, when you find out about, what's actually happening in the world that is government approved and government run, in a way. It doesn't break me to find out that, RCIA is in charge of cocaine distribution and opiate distribution across the world, and that Mossad controls ecstasy and MDMA. And who knows if that's true? Maybe it's just for entertainment purposes only. But when you hear about shit like that, and then you backtrack that, you follow the dollars there, and you're like, oh, Vietnam became the #1 producer of opium after we got there, and took over their fields. Afghanistan was like number 13 or something in the world for opium, and then we got there for 20 years, and it became #1 by a fucking landslide for opium. Like that's not earth-shattering, because you can follow dollars, and at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, people die from drugs, but there's a choice in that matter. Whereas the kids thing is like, there's no choice in this matter. Yeah. And he even interviews, what's his name? Oliver Stone's son, who had a show on Gaia and was talking basically through people who had survived, these horrific satanic rituals. And there is a common thread line that goes through them. And it was just wild. He said the guy, I think it was a guy recounting in his 30s when he was 8 years old. And his mom was like, I don't understand why you're being such a big baby about this, because they were going to fucking eat a kid or something, and he goes, well, it's not right. She's like, consciousness is eternal. He's just going to get a new body anyways. What are you worried about? Like, that was her answer. And I was like, damn, that is true. And holy shit, like, if that's the lens you take to be able to commit the most heinous crime against the most innocent thing on the planet, right? That's fucking wild. But like, that's the mind. Why do people watch, especially women? I was just talking in a conversation with Tosh last night about why women are so drawn to like Law and Order, SVU, and these serial killer documentaries and things like that. And it was her idea that potentially it's because women are the targets of most of these guys. My wife's 5'2", 110, 15 pounds. She doesn't have the ability to defend herself the way that I do. Even without a fight career, I could always defend. I'm 6'4", sure. Like you're a tall, big guy. Like we're not necessarily targets. Add in the weightlifting, add in martial arts, add in how we carry ourselves. That's not a target, but it's a totally different frame point for that. And I was like, oh, that actually makes sense why women would be so drawn to that. But as fucked as that is, when you get inside of the mind of a psycho in that way and it becomes real in a potential, then it's there, right? And that's a hard fucking pill to swallow. And a lot of other people would just let us, oh, they debunked Pizzagate. They debunked this. They debunked that. And they just toss it out the window. And it's like, well, there's overwhelming evidence that that wasn't the case, and that the debunking was a joke as far as I'm concerned with the amount of evidence that's there. And so, yeah, as far as like, I don't know if it does take a crack in the system to open one to any or all of the conspiracies, but it's certainly helpful. And so, End Upside Down Contact by Gober's phenomenal. And End Upside Down Cosmos was his last book. We podcasted on that. You can listen to it here. If you didn't hear it, it was fucking great. And Gober, that is one that will upend, your opinion of reality in a very, very imposing and dramatic way.
Yeah. What Tosh shared really does resonate, like where there's an interest in trying to understand like the strategies and the histories of the predator / like whoever you see as your opponent. And one of the things that I'm feeling is I had to create for myself a personal mythology to get past my early life trauma. And like what I mean is like I traumatized myself with materialism and skepticism when I was in my early 20s and like analytical philosophy, where I almost like broke my mind in a way where I could have died and not cared. And so to get past that, like self-induced psychosis almost, because I was pairing like really intense analytical philosophy with mushrooms and stuff, and it's horrible. Don't recommend. But so I had to create a personal mythology to get me past that, where as I've increasingly found like material and classic success, my mythology demands that I continue to contend with like the next level of the game. And so recently it feels like the big level that I've figured out how to do is like fundamentally how to get paid doing what feels like my calling in a way that helps people in a way that I'm not ashamed of. And it feels like that's like that has clicked. And so now I have this like extra bandwidth to start to look at the next level. And for me personally, because I have looked long and hard into the abyss of existential risk theory, and that like some of the best minds of our time, when they look at the momentum of our culture and they try to come up with prediction models for like what's the likelihood that we cataclysmically, existentially threaten humanity on this planet within the next 200 years, it's way too high. It's way too high for comfort. Like the chances of AI or atomic fallout or ecological collapse or the democratization, air quotes, of biological weapons, like we are going to need, in my opinion, a cultural renaissance that will take multiple generations. And because I feel like it's either that or, like I'm trying to have kids and be a good dad, and I want them to have a planet that feels like, they have more liberty than I did, like to continue that progress. I feel called to, continue to grow my competence so that I can in some way contend with the predator, air quotes, and I really think it's the intelligence agencies that not everyone there, but if you think in the terms of aggregors, like every nation, every company, every religion, every scientific theory is what Carl Jung would call an organizing story. And a mythological way to think of an organizing story is to think of it as an egregore, and an egregore is basically a thought form that has a set of thoughts and beliefs that the people who are attracted to it will download into them so that they can get a sense of camaraderie or a sense of like a worldview that can stabilize them from, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And that the egregores that make up intelligence agencies, their fundamental ethos, their fundamental belief is deception. And I think that, like, in my cosmology, any person whose fundamental modus operandi is to deceive, that is a sick, broken person, in my opinion. And so when you think of an organization where that's their fundamental creed, it's like that's the enemy, in my opinion. And I'm really interested in understanding how they work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from a philosophical standpoint, and as a father, somebody broke this down for me, and Dr. Nathan Riley sent it to me, but it was a breakdown of the differences between J.R.R. Tolkien's lines through The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit versus Dune.
I saw that.
Yeah, and how, Dune, your main characters are actually the villains.
Yep.
And they are the ones that say the ends justify the means.
Yep.
Right? And if you look to the deception or anything that's happening in the world, it's always that quote, right? It's always the end justifies the means. Anything that is... Everything's on the table if it gets us to where we need to go. I'm reading John Gwynn's fiction books right now. They're fucking rad. I sent you one, but it starts with, I don't forget the title of all of them, but Malice is his first of 4. And the same thing comes up. Does the ends justify the means? There's 2 main characters that are being built. One guy says yes, like we're going to have to make sacrifices and do things we don't want to in order to create the empire that sustains peace and harmony throughout the kingdom. Right? And the others follows exactly what J.R.R. Tolkien was talking about. Like, we may win, we may lose, but we're going to do what we need to do in every single situation because it's the right thing to do, not because it'll help us win or because it makes sense of everything else, just because it's the right thing to do in that situation. Right? And there's a degree of honor, and it's funny,
Sure.
Like in growing up and thinking of like the attraction to warrior spirit, the attraction to the inner knowing of a martial artist, right? Like thinking of that, I never really thought of honor much. Like, fucking honorable. Like, all right, I'll just tell the truth. Like it wasn't an attractive force. But then as a father, you think about that, like, oh, what type of character traits do I want to pass on to my kids, or at least give them the opportunity to hone on their own and live, right? And like that fucking honor is a big one, right? Like not what you do, but how you do it. And obviously the truth is super important. We talk about the 4 agreements all the time. Being impeccable with your word is more than just telling the truth, right? And I go back to Anahata on this. You can tell someone the truth, but is it helpful or harmful? Right? Doesn't mean lie to the person. Don't lie. But can it be said in a way, you can say things that cut that are true, and you can say things that heal that are true. And so, how we use that, how we use language really matters. But I can feel your dad essence coming on fucking strong. And I think, to your point, like, oh, it's going to take generations. Yes, absolutely. I remember people, the old saying that tough times make for hard people make for easy times make weak people make for tough times. And that cycle just fucking goes and goes and goes. And this is our opportunity. It's our opportunity to seed. Because if you look at like half of the thinking that is wrong can be rabbit holed as well. You go back to guys like G. Edward Griffin, who wrote several books, but he wrote The Creature at Jekyll Island, all on the creation of the Federal Reserve. He was a teacher at Cal Berkeley in the 60s, and there's old black and white footage you can pull up of G. Edward Griffin, 1969 at Berkeley, and he's talking about the American Communist Manifesto and how that was seeded into the youth through colleges first and then through our education system, and that certain ideologies were put in place generationally ahead of time to get us to a point where we would love to fucking be socialists. We would love to run give all of our power away and say we don't need guns and all the things. And just how long that process has been in place is mind-blowing, but it's trackable, right? And so like you think about that, it's like, well, what's the way to fight that? You can't just change. It's this thing where I talked about for a long time in Fit for Service was like, it's one thing to work with adults that want to fix themselves, another thing to fucking raise kids in a way that right from the jump they know their connection
100%.
to God, they know their worth, they know what it means to be living in a way that is helpful to the people here and living in right relation with all the fucking sacred hoop. And I think of that as like that is the answer. I love the fact, dude, Total Twins, you're going to love. It's funny. You pull up any AI, he'll say like, oh, Total Twins is mostly a conservative type view of history and things like that. And it's like, that's not. They're fucking libertarian. And they'll say it right in the beginning. But politics aside, it's a closer look at the truth than we would ever be taught in school, ever in public school. And it follows quite along the same lines as Captain Fantastic, and I thought about that right in the beginning when you were talking about the Bill of Rights, because, his kids are homeschooled and the kids in public school have no idea what the amendments were. And he brings this kid over famously and, his kid can just fucking quote. And he's like, no, you're regurgitating. What does it mean to you? Right. And then she drops and you're just like, damn, like the kid knows how to think. Right. But that scene is powerful because ultimately that's what needs to happen for generations going forward.
100%.
And it won't happen for everyone. It's not going to happen for everyone. I love the conversation. I've had a couple of great conversations with Edmund Knighton. Edmund is knows Steiner as well as anyone that I've had on the podcast, knows the law of one, the raw contact as well as anyone. And one of the things that I really appreciate about him is the reframe on, what it is to do here. Like, we're not here to fucking wake everyone up. We're not here to usher in fifth dimensional consciousness. We're not here to do any of those things. The people that are asleep might have chosen to be so on a soul level, and if they're not looking to wake up, it is actually an intrusion karmically. It is not karmically good for you to try to wake somebody up that's asleep. Let them fucking sleep. This is their turn to fucking sleep, right? And so thinking about that takes the pressure off of needing to fix everyone, needing to change everyone, needing to fucking wake everyone up. That's not the case. But for those of us that are paying attention, that did want to look at it, whether it's Epstein files or UAPs or any of this shit, if you're willing to look at it and see the hard things and wrestle with that using discernment and see what feels right and what doesn't and corroborate and find more evidence for these things, if you're willing to do that work, if you're one of the people that is trying to make their lives better and not just accepting of what's fucking been handed to them, if you're in any sense of self-betterment, then you're on that trajectory, right? Because you are seeking. And I think those are the people that we grab by the hand and say, check this shit out. This is dope,
100%. Like the core of it for me is I think we need a renaissance, and I want to help contribute to a renaissance. And what one of the pieces of trying to really understand what would be required for a renaissance, what that does is it brings into sharp contrast the public education that we've all gone through. And it is I think I need to do more research on it so that I can articulate the names and the quotes and get it really dialed. But I definitely know that if people wanted to look this up, there is a name of one of the architects of one of the main leaders of the think tank that was the architects of the public education system. He is quoted on paper for having said, We don't need any more politicians. We don't need any more philosophers. We don't need any more men of science, and we don't need any more polymaths. We are those. We need people who can follow directions. And there was the way he worded it when I read it made me more upset than almost anything I've ever read in my life, because this was his public declaration back in I think the late 1800s of what the explicit goal was for the public education system. And I think in hindsight, there is definitely crimes against humanity for the people responsible for creating the public education system. Of course, it brought a bunch of people who didn't have the means to learn how to read. But one of the architects' explicit quote that was in the paper, this is a fact, was that their goal was basically to create, a slave class. And for there to be a renaissance, there's going to have to be a revolution in how we educate the next generation. And what I'm personally interested in is organizing my vocational goals in such a way where I can be a very present father, so that if what wants to arise, I have dreams of a homeschooling thing where it's a bunch of us
Co-op.
yeah, and we all teach the intro class for children to our dharma, and that this is a proto model for a guild system, so that we can be on the lookout for the next generation of kids who their divine spark, we are called to make them our mentors and to give them all of our knowledge, and to propel them on the shoulders of giants so they can go beyond us. I think one of the fundamental psychological developmental stages that almost no one gets is to be the master of a craft and to find a young mentee who you can feel you're not like any of the other kids. You have a motherfucking thing in you that I am called on by my dharma to give everything that I know to you. And almost none of us get that, because we don't put most people don't acquire mastery at anything. But if they do acquire mastery at something, they often don't teach. At least the people I know, especially in the arts, there's this weird kind of unquestioned belief that in order to be a master doesn't have a school. They're just off doing their master shit. And frankly, that's why I think a lot of master artists struggle with suicide in their later life, because they're not orienting to the next developmental call, which I think is to be is to take on the tutelage of a student. And so one of the things that I'm imagining is none of us, it just seems in the same way you can't tell your wife or your husband that they're fat and that they need to work out. It has to come from someone else. It can't be you. I think there's something that happens that we can't truly have that mentor-mentee dharmic relationship with our children. It has to be with someone else's child. I think there is an intelligence in the psyche for a communal interweaving, where your children will love to train with you, but there will be someone else's child who just you can see that they're fucking obsessed, and it's just their whole life, and they want to know how and that they can talk about it for 6 hours or whatever the thing is. And I think that type of I think everyone who pays attention to what I share, because it's an eclectic group of people, is you're morally obligated to learn how to play the game of life so that you can give an education to your children that it will make them so much fucking smarter than you, so much more capable than you, and that's your gift to them. And then to do whatever type of psychological work you have to do to not resent how fucking far ahead they are than you were at their age. Because I think we are like kind of like, we're a transition generation where in hindsight we can look back on our childhood and there's both this like nostalgia, but there's also this awareness of like, damn, it's a miracle that I'm here and that I'm able to help people in any way because of what I grew up on and what I was eating and what I was consuming informationally. Because I think the dream that we were giving as kids is dead forever. Like the kind of implicit American dream, where it's like you go to college, you pay your taxes, you work for a company for 20 plus years, you retire and you'll have a home and you'll be able to go on vacations, and that's winning. Not only is that not winning, it's not even a viable strategy for almost anyone. Like anyone who is trying, that's just like hoping, like, if I just stay in for 5 more years, I'll get the retirement. Like, most of those jobs won't be there, that I feel like we're in a really weird time where we need a renaissance, and to contribute to a renaissance will require us to grieve the dream that we used to have.
Yeah.
And just be prepared to eat shit to help our kids, like at least be able to stand above like level 1 of the Hunger Games. Like it feels like one of the things that I try to like tell people, we are all, everyone that triggers you on social media, everyone whose face you can see in a video, even the quote unquote elite, except for like 10 of them, we're all in the Hunger Games. We're all from different districts. No one is out of the Hunger Games. Like the people who make 10 million a year still in the Hunger Games. Like, and we're actually on each other's team, in this really fucked up way, and we're too busy hurling shit at each other than to like turn our collective gaze towards the like castle. And I'm still trying to figure out like, how can we create havens within the Hunger Games?
Yeah.
Like, because to get to the castle, like, it's not our generation. And I'm totally open to, like, maybe it is. And, like, I'm capable of more than I think. But I definitely think there's I'm entering into my chapter of being a father. Like, there's nothing official yet, but things are moving in the right direction, and we're definitely looking forward to hearing what devices reflect soon, Mm-hmm. But I'm ready to give my life to trying to just focus on my kids and the people that I can help in my part of the garden, to just have like the best education, the cleanest attachment bonds to adults, so that they can just fucking, like, flourish their gifts so that they can contend with the bullshit that I'm too stupid to contend with,
Yeah, I love that, brother. Beautifully stated. Well, I'm so stoked for you guys. Absolutely stoked. Tell us, we got to wrap up here soon, but tell us a little bit about your event you just threw, Dharma Artist Collective, and the cool shit that you're doing with your group online. If anybody's interested, I'd love to fucking send people your way, because you've been in this now since, even before we acknowledged the death of Fit for Service. You had been working to build this thing, and you've been doing it for over a year, and it's gone really well.
Yeah, so the Dharma Artist Collective is a group that started online for artists and entrepreneurs who could tell that their capacity to focus because of the internet had really been injured. And so I created a space online where I basically reverse engineered my personal process that I've used for 10 plus years to get into deep focus for a couple of hours every day, regardless of like how busy my life was, and reflect like how important I think this is as like a fundamental practice. Like one of the things that I think a lot of people don't have an appreciation for is if you don't get REM sleep for a couple of days, you start to exhibit severe signs of psychosis to the point of basically having like a psychotic break. Like it makes us go insane. I think the same way we need REM sleep, I think we biologically and cognitively require periods of deep focus daily. And that deep focus is like 1 to 4 hours being completely immersed in a task without task switching. And that's something that most of us got access to for most of our life because we didn't have, you know, these motherfucking phones. But now the average person in my generation checks their phone between 200 and 280 times a day. And if you sleep for 8 hours a day, which most people in my generation don't, most people in my generation in the West are sleep deprived. But let's just say you got 8 hours of sleep. If you check your phone 200 times a day, it means you're checking your phone every 4 to 5 minutes. I have citations for this on my website, but it takes about 20 minutes for your cognition to drop into deep focus. Like it takes like about 20 minutes for your brain to like start to move all the bullshit information away and to bring everything from the subconscious into the context, then do the complex task with deep focus. So if it takes 20 minutes to drop into deep focus and the average person is checking their phone every 4 to 5 minutes, the average person in our culture is perpetually distracted. And I think they're not getting that like equivalent of REM sleep to their cognition. And if you look at the rise in mental illness in our country, in all Western countries, there's this weird, and people debate over what's the cause, but what they can't debate over is there is a spike from 2012 that has just risen every fucking year since 2012. At 2012, a bunch of things happened. The first front-facing camera was invented. This is between 2010 and 2012. The first frontward-facing camera happened. The deployment of 3G, which really increased the rate in which people could use their phones. Instagram was invented and then sold to Meta, and then it went from no followers to 90 million followers. The first set of Instagram filters were created, and all of these things came together at one time to radically change the cognitive environment of the average person in the West. And so I created basically a game for people to learn how to focus with each other, and I took some aspects of AA, like, you know, a irresponsible DJ, and I was like, what happens if we just mush these two things together? And so basically the core practice we do is what is called a Dharma sprint, and so a bunch of people log on, we all share what we intend to give our full focus to for the next 3 hours, and then everyone keeps their camera on and they just work on whatever it is they're working on. And you know, there's between like 20 and 50 people on these calls most days, and there's people playing music, there's people doing motherfucking works out and Tai Chi, there's people writing, there's people podcasting, there's just all this stuff happening. And then at the end of the 3 hours, we chime a bell, and then everyone comes back and we let 2 to 4 people share just like what their emotional experience was like. And just having people share their like their tender truth that day, just like, you know, with ceremonial circles and things like that, the shares become like their own main event. And it's just what you need to hear, blah blah blah. And so that really started to get a bunch of momentum, and then I eventually decided to like host my first event, you know, because I've been a part of a bunch of FFS events, but I was like, what type of event do I want? And so what I came up with was this kind of like anti-event where There will be no one on stage who's a teacher. It's going to be like, so the way I've designed it, and when I first ran it, I had no idea if it would work because I was like, people might fucking hate this. It is a huge success, and I encourage anyone to steal the form and to try it out with your own friends because it fucking works. So basically for 4 to 5 days, we commit to doing those sprints like 2 or 3 in the morning, like for an hour to 2 hours, and then we take a 20-minute break and we walk on the land, and it's a silent land walk. So the first like 6 hours of the day, everyone's just in their deep focus on whatever is the most interesting to them. And then I have a 3-hour lunch period where people can talk and eat and play, and we play sports and we get sweaty and we just fuck around. And then after lunch, there's an hour-long like dream circle where I basically teach people how to share their dreams. And then I just let the group share whatever dreams they've had in the last few days. And then once we get past the first day, you can only share dreams that you've had during the container. And then after that, everyone who comes has to perform in the open mic. And you can't do whatever you did in the past. So like if you played a song the last time, you have to do something new. And then we eat dinner and then people go home. What happens is that in that type of environment, the artistic latent potential and everyone in the space starts to become the teachers to each other. And people get so much fucking work done, like good, meaningful work on whatever it is they're working on. Everyone gets tan, because we're out here, like everyone fucking had a tan. But the real fucking magic is the dream shares just get more intense and weird as the days go on and everyone starts to be in each other's dreams. It's so cool. But the real thing is the open mics. Like, everyone wants to be seen, and everyone is afraid to be heard and seen because they're afraid to be judged. And you just see so many people break through that, like, they're terrified, and then they start doing their thing, and whatever comes out is fucking beautiful. And then everyone stands up and claps, and like there's tears, and it's just like, it's so good. And I don't have to plan anything. I don't have to prepare anything. It's just full jazz trust. There's no workshops. There's no lectures. There's no like ecstatic dance, even though I do think ecstatic dance would be cool. And then on the last day, we have them do a land wander, and then we do a despacho in the fire in the evening. And, it's just a very honored to be the leader of a cult. And that's awesome. And the cult is get defocused every day, do things that scare you, make art, and help people.
Fuck yeah, brother. Well, my man, I love you so much. It's always great having you on the podcast.
Love you too, man.
We'll link to your website in the show notes. And that's it, dude. Thank you. We'll run it back again. Love you, buddy.
Love you.